No more time in today, the sun is fading away, and I'm left feeling cray. I need to make a change, it's time to rearrange.
Welcome back to The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, Chapter 3. Quick overview, we've got 4 steps to stress-free productivity: collect, process, plan, and do. Previously we talked about collect. Today we're going to talk about process. Step 2, process. So the overview of process basically goes from taking everything that we've collected into the inbox in the first step. We're going to look at each item, we're going to define what it is, and we're going to figure out where it goes. Pretty straightforward. Here's the detailed thought process that we go through as we're looking at everything in our inbox and defining what it is and trying to figure out where it goes. So we've collected everything into the inbox. Now we're going to pick it up and we're going to look at it. So this might be an email or this might be something physical. And we're going to ask the first question, is it actionable? If it's not actionable, is it trash? If it's trash, we're going to delete it or throw it in the trash. Is it something that we might need to reference later? We're going to file it somewhere. I like to use Box. And because so much of the items that we get today are searchable, I'm very stingy about what I file and oftentimes don't bother because I can usually find it in the email or otherwise. And then the last choice is someday maybe. So this might be like a project or something that you're going to do maybe down the road. So it might be a trip you want to go on, something you want to buy, things like that. If it is actionable, the next question I'm going to ask is it a single step or is it a multiple step? If it's going to take multiple steps to complete whatever it is, I'm going to classify that as a project, and I'm going to put it in the project binder. We'll talk about that more in a minute. If it is a single step, the next question I'm going to ask is, can I do it in less than 2 minutes? If I can, I'm just going to do it right then and there. If it's going to take me longer than 2 minutes, it's really important that we don't do it right now because we're in process mode. And I'm going to ask the next question, is it for me? If it's not for me, I'm going to delegate it. And I'll talk a little bit about how I manage things that I delegate in the next slide. If it is for me, I'm going to ask the next question, which is it to be done on a specific day and time? If it is, that means it's going to go right into my calendar. If it's something that needs to be done by a certain time, but I have flexibility when, or I've got flexibility on the deadline, it's going to go into my next action binder. So when I'm done with this step 2 process, everything's defined, I know what it is, and it's put in its proper place. So we have no more stuff. Everything's been transformed from stuff into a specific next action in its proper place, and that just feels great. So here's an overview of my actual binders. So I use Evernote, Outlook, and Box. So when I talk about binders, it used to be that prior to using these electronic tools, which are fantastic, I would actually use physical 3-ring binders. And so I would have one 3-ring binder for my projects. And so within that binder, I would have tabs for each project. Today, I have one Evernote notebook, and within the Evernote notebook, I've got a series of notes for each project, and we'll look at an example on the next slide. Then I also have binders for each of the next actions. So these are all the things that are single step, projects are multi-step. And I've got a different binder based on context. Now, context is one of the sort of unique concepts that is specific to this particular system. So I have to think about setting myself up to do execution work based on where I am, how much time I have, and how much energy I have. And so I've set up each of these next action binders based on various contexts. So sometimes it's about doing work on my computer that's work related. Sometimes it's about doing errands. So when I'm actually out of the office traveling between home and the office and I've got time to actually do errands, Sometimes it's only things I can do in the office, so I've got a notebook for that in Evernote, or it's things that are personal or can only be done at home. In that case, and oftentimes these are computer related items too, but I like to separate those from the work stuff, because oftentimes my location or time or energy would have me do work or personal stuff. And then the last Evernote notebook that I have set up is for agendas. And so these are for any standing meetings that I have, and I've got a place to put information related to those so I know exactly where to find it when I'm in that particular context. I also have folders set up in Outlook for calls. So if I get an email, I need to call somebody back, I will forward that to that particular folder. I also, if I get items that I want to read or watch that are sent to me or that I find online, I will send them to my inbox in Outlook, and then I'll save them in this folder to watch them at the appropriate time. I mentioned Someday Maybe previously. I keep those items in an email folder in Outlook. Travel itineraries go here. And then I mentioned before, most of the items that I delegate, I will often do that through email. So I'll send a detailed email that talks specifically about what it is that's being delegated, when it's going to be done, who's owning it, and then I'll blind copy myself on that email, and then I'll put it in this folder so that it's there for follow-up. So here's an example of what my project binder might look like. So I've got, remember, one notebook that used to be a physical binder back in the old days, but today it's an Evernote notebook. And within that notebook, I've got each project has a note. And so in this particular case, we're looking at the Fathom Guiding Principles project that I'm working on. If I click on that, I'll have a note. I like to define what done is for that particular project, and I might also list particular milestones. And then I can also have a link to Box. So if I've got files related to that project that I want to save, in this case, I've got a series of articles that we're putting together for the Guiding Principles. I can conveniently jump right into Box from the Evernote note, and that's how I keep track of projects like that. The next set of binders are the next actions. So these are one step, so based on context. So in this case, we're looking at the Evernote notebook for my next actions for things that I'm going to do on the computer that are work related. And so if we look at an example within this folder, there are a series of notes. These are one-step items. In this case, I'm going to follow up with Elizabeth and get some help in finding some items that are going to be part of the Guiding Principles book that we're putting together. All right, so that's an overview of the process step. And so we've collected everything, we've transformed it by defining what it is and putting it in its proper place, and now we're ready for stress-free productivity like our buddy Yoda over here. Thank you, and see you next time.
What am I grateful for? I think about the little things. What am